Alright YouTube, so we are back, of course, to talk about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, and of course we're back to look at some more translations from the Ultimania Plus, and the plan was to look at something from potentially the Trace of Two Past book, but what little of the translations I've seen so far haven't really been video-worthy that I've seen. I've not seen all the translations yet, but there's one thing that I do want to talk about that I think most people are talking about, most people are interested in. With the Aerith side of the story, or maybe just the book in general, it starts out on the boat to Costa del Sol. Or the ship, the cargo ship, whatever you want to call it. But regardless, this translation we're going to look at doesn't actually come from Audrey on Twitter, though she has also tweeted about this. It comes from FF7 on Twitter. I'm just going to read this first paragraph really quickly that tells us that we're on the cargo ship because it's pretty interesting. Aerith Gainsborough was on Shinra Ferry number 8. Like her friends, she wore Shinra's military uniform. It was her first time on the sea, as well as on a ship. The ferry connecting Junon and Costa del Sol was unexpectedly lavish. Enticed by curiosity, she looked around the ferry. However, the wealthy passengers were not welcoming towards troopers. Driven away by the cold stares, she arrived at the bottom ferry's cargo hold. The goods and luggage were all over the place. Someone was there. So there's a couple of things to unpack here. For one, why the hell are we on the ship? Like, we know, as of right now, at the end of Remake, at the end of, like, Intermission DLC or whatever, that our group is at Calm. So it's kind of weird that they have this book that's a tie-in to Remake, because it does say Final Fantasy VII Remake, Trace of Two Past on the book. So it ties into that story. It's picking up somewhere that we're not even near this part of the story yet. We still got to do the Calm stuff, and then potentially everything between Calm and Junon, the Junon stuff itself, and then we're on the cargo ship to Costa del Sol. So that alone is standing out to a lot of people. It's super weird that they would have a part of the story in a location that we're not even near yet, but also the fact that part 2's, potentially at least a couple of years away still. So it's just so weird. Like, I don't know why they couldn't do like Tifa and Aerith like telling each other their history just in Calm or something, or the walk to Calm, or the walk from Calm to Mithril Mine or something. I don't know, it's just kind of strange. Some other things that stand out, of course, are that it seems like we're going to get to do the cargo ship thing like we did in the original game, also in the remake story. We see that Aerith is dressed up in military uniform like the rest of our group. But something that really stood out to me as well from this is that, according to that paragraph that we just read, it seems like we're almost on like a cruise ship instead of a cargo ship, because they talk about how lavish the ship is, and that there's actually passengers that are kind of wary of the troops and the troopers and stuff, which in the original FF7, it was just Shinra troops that we ever see on board. Now, that doesn't mean that when it came to the original game, there wasn't supposed to be, like, conceptually other people in the ship, but it's just not what we ever see, and it doesn't look like a lavish ship like this description is. It looked like a very basic cargo ship. Something else I wanted to address really quickly before we hop into some more translations is that there's potentially a possible mistranslation from Audrey, or like slightly mistranslated. We talked about in the last video, there's that part where Toriyama seemed to be like teasing the possibility of Jesse being alive, but I had multiple comments on my video from people saying that there was somebody else that translated that exact segment from the Ultimania, and their translation was more so kind of Toriyama implying that she was still dead. Now, I have no idea, my dudes, out of her and this other person and anybody else doing translations who's more accurate. I have no idea. We just always use Audrey. And I am simply not going to spend, like, hours and hours of my day looking at her translation and trying to find somebody else doing the exact same translation and seeing if it's vaguely different or slightly different. I don't know. We're just know going forward when we use Audrey's translations, they may not be 100% accurate, which is actually something we've seen in the past. I know she translated something not too long ago that was, like, actually pretty inaccurate and had, like, articles written about her, and, like, it had the community buzzing, and it ended up not being true at all. So, anyways, on to some translations. So, we're going to continue from where we left off with the last video. This was the last translation we looked at. It was Toriyama talking about the multiple Sephiroth. So, we're just going to scroll up from here. Anything interesting that I see, we'll talk about. So first up, according to level design supervisor Sawada, they initially had a lot more blood on Yuffie's cheek in the ending of episode Intermission, but I guess they took it back a little bit because of course, the rating, but also they wanted the impact of the scene to be the destruction of Sector 7, not just the blood on her face. It kind of makes me wonder how much more blood we're talking about here, because you could have definitely put more on her cheek and it not increase the rating of the overall DLC, but also the scene would have still been just as impactful. But I suppose some blood is better than none, since we had absolutely zero in the base game. Apparently the design team did a lot of actual like simulation and testing for the different like lengths of knee-high socks to figure out what would be a realistic design for Yuffie, so that her socks wouldn't be like falling down with all the different kinds of movements she did. Not super like crazy information, but it's pretty cool that they went through that kind of effort. So anyways, on to some actual translations now. With the Rude fight that we have with Aerith and Cloud, apparently Rude is aware that Cloud isn't a member soldier, so at the bottom there, after Cloud blocks his attack, it says, Rude can tell that Cloud is not a real soldier. Cloud is strong and is able to intercept Rude's kick, but Rude can see right through him and provokes him instead. Now, I'm not entirely sure how Rude would know that Cloud's not a member soldier, outside of maybe just not recognizing him from like the Shinra building or something, but Cloud clearly has the look, has the outfit, the big-ass sword, the strength, the capabilities, the Mako eyes, so everything about him seems like he would be a member soldier, but maybe it's just because Rude doesn't recognize him. So this next translation is actually a pretty cool one. It's about the Nibelheim flashback we got at the beginning of Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's something we've talked about here on the channel. We've broke down this scene damn near frame by frame. And the question is, during the Mako Reactor scene, when Cloud recalls his memories of Nibelheim, the song Anxious Heart Fake Memories plays. As the song name suggests, is this some memory that has been created by other factors? Within Cloud resides some lingering effects as a result of the experiments done on him that he himself is not aware of. These are represented throughout the story as a noise in his consciousness or take shape as an illusion. In the Mako Reactor scene, the memories he recalls of his hometown bring forth feelings of sadness and anxiety, an anxious heart. To what extent are these memories real? Where did these recollections come from? Or perhaps these are just things that Cloud himself wishes for. That has yet to be expressed. So why this translation is interesting is because, for one, the title of the song, of course, Anxious Heart, False Memories. Cloud has a lot of false memories. We know that based on the original game. But also, this scene itself, we see a young Tifa that seems to be upset at Cloud for some reason, maybe because Cloud doesn't want to hang out with her, play with her, whatever. But we know based on the original FF7 that Cloud and Tifa weren't actually close as kids. Like, they weren't friends at all. So the scene, we should have known right out the gate that this flashback isn't even real, probably. This is probably a false memory. In the scene where Cloud watches Aerith walk away, the script says his fingers buzzed and his eyes burned. This caused him to recall a scene from the original Final Fantasy VII's Forgotten Capital. This overwhelming anxiety made him let out a tear. Why did this happen? Spending time with Aerith is fun, although the unstable future teeters back and forth upon them. Even though this scene is only showing Aerith casually meeting up with Cloud, there might be something from Cloud and Aerith that is at work here during these precious moments. In addition, in the original Final Fantasy VII game, there's a scene in the Sleeping Forest where Aerith is featured with similar composition and movements, and it's possible that one of the causes of Cloud's tear is because a memory of the future was awakened. So there we have another vague or kind of weird statement from Toriyama about future memories or whatever. Who knows what's going on with this goddamn game, dude? I'm so confused. But I never would have thought with this scene right here, in particular, that it's some sort of parallel, potentially, to the Sleeping Forest segment of the game, which is, you see Aerith within the Sleeping Forest in that dream I think Cloud has, if I'm not mistaken, but it's like right before she dies. Can you explain why Red 13 lost his consciousness in Chapter 16? It seems the Whisperers would chase after him since his violent demeanor deviates from the destiny that the Whisperers aim for, so why did they not stop him? Red 13 did not lose his consciousness, rather it was the result of repeated experiments by Hojo that planted fear and anger into him. After releasing these emotions, he acts like a type of wary wild animal. However, thanks to Aerith's courage in reaching out to him, he's able to calm down so the Whisperers did not need to intervene here. In addition, when Aerith comes in contact with Red 13, he is able to obtain knowledge that only he can see due to his longevity. However, the amount he receives is so vast that he is not able to see everything clearly. So this was a pretty cool one too, because we know now that Red 13 got to see like a long time in the future, probably hundreds of years, because when it came to like the ending of Remake, whenever we get that flash of like him running with his kids or whatever, like that's the post-credit scene from the original FF7, which is like 500 years in the future. But with that scene at the end of Remake, he knows what it is.
What the hell did I just see?
A glimpse of tomorrow if we fail here today.
So longevity is probably just in reference to how long he'll live, because he lives to be hundreds of years old, and he probably saw all the way up to at least that vision, if not further. So here we get a really cool translation, where at the end of the game, whenever Rufus is seeing the Whisperers and he has that confused look on his face, it's actually not him looking at the Whisperers, he's trying to figure out why Song cannot see them. So we'll just read over the script really quick for this scene. Shinra building is surrounded by a large amount of Whisperers. They are even present, passing through the floor into the ceiling of the President's floor. What is this? Is something wrong, sir? Song cannot see the Whisperers. The flow of the Whisperers pauses. Rufus looks at Song as he tries to decipher his reaction. Song receives a phone call. I see, very good. Song hangs up and relays the message to Rufus. The men are on standby, sir. Your orders? Bring them in. Rufus wonders why Song has no reaction to the huge amount of Whisperers swarming around them. So I thought that was kind of a cool translation, just because I took the scene as him being confused about the Whisperers in general, which I'm sure that's part of it as well, but it's actually the context of the scene is that he's confused why Song can't see them, which in a future translation we'll actually have an answer as to why Rufus can. And actually the translation right after this is where we get the answer. Why is Cloud unable to see the Whisperers until he comes into contact with Aerith? Cloud is only able to see the Whisperers once he comes into contact with them, as they were clinging to Aerith. However, the ability to see the Whisperers isn't activated by touch alone. Only those who can influence and decide the fate of the planet are able to see them. Although this is not shown in the game, Baird and the others can see the Whisperers once they come into contact with the Whisperers that are surveying Cloud. Rufus can only see the Whispers because he came into contact with the Whispers during his fight with Cloud. So that explained why Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge are able to see the Whispers when they're attacking the Sector 7 Sloans, because they've been in contact with Cloud. And I think there might be also like just random NPCs that can see them, but obviously Cloud has been all around Sector 7, so that might explain why everybody can see them within the slums. It's also nice to get an explanation now as to why Rufus was able to see the Whispers but not Song. It's because of the fight they'd have with Cloud. And of course, the Whispers are surveying and following Cloud as well. But it's also pretty interesting that only people that can help like decide the fate of the planet are able to see the Whispers. Now, I don't know if that means like Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge, and anybody that touches Cloud that can now also see the Whispers. Does that also mean they're able to decide the fate of the planet? I'm not entirely sure. Does this mean that Rufus can help decide the fate of the planet? This one I thought was pretty cool too. In FF7R Chapter 2, the Shinra cadet who says, "Wait, I know that sword," actually knew Zack and recognized the Buster Sword. The meaning of his line that is not voiced is, "How do you know Zack?" which causes Cloud to have the noise in his head. So pretty similar to the Evergreen Park segment that we talked about in the last video where Aerith says Zack's name but Cloud doesn't actually hear it and gets the headache. In the segment of the game near the beginning where the soldier says something and Cloud gets a headache, it's because it's actually saying Zack's name as well. Apparently within the Vice fight in Integrate, he actually uses Azul and Rosso's weapons, which are characters that were in Dirge of Cerberus that at least currently aren't in Remake or weren't in Intermission or anything like that. But this kind of confirms that they exist within the Remake world to some degree. It could just be a fun little Easter egg for the fans, but before we got episode Intermission, nobody would have ever thought that we'd actually have Vice and Nero within the game, and we do, so I wouldn't entirely write off Azul or Rosso yet. So here we get confirmation that the line that Sephiroth says in the alleyway near the beginning of the game is in fact what Cloud's mom said, I guess right before she's going to die. Whenever he says, "Run, Cloud, run away, you have to leave, you have to live," that's what Cloud's mom said to him. This has been a theory for quite a while now. It's something that people have been talking about for the last couple of years, probably since like that first trailer we got for the game where I believe this is said, or like the E3 trailer we got in like 2019, and some of the community is correct on it, man. That's pretty crazy. I also imagine since we got confirmation that those are like maybe the last words that Cloud's mom ever said, we're probably going to hear those lines maybe at the beginning of part 2 when we get like the Nibelheim calm flashback. Like I imagine we're actually going to hear Claudia say those lines. And lastly, for the translations that are currently on Audrey's feed, this is the last one at the top of her feed right now as I'm recording. It says, "For Chapter 17 scene in front of Genova's tank, when Aerith says the name Genova, noise starts to fill Cloud's head. Sephiroth appears from above, and this causes Cloud to see scenes from the past. At first, only Cloud can see this Sephiroth." So the main reason why I want to cover that is we get confirmation that when Cloud gets the headache, we're seeing a flashback whenever Sephiroth is talking to Genova. And why that matters is I did a video a while back about how in that flashback scene, Genova is missing her head just like she is in the present. And that's kind of weird because in the original game, in like the Nibelheim reactor, she still has her head. You know, after Cloud like stabs Sephiroth, that's when he cuts off her head. So she shouldn't be missing her head in that scene, but she is. And people were convinced that in that flashback segment, it was like that scene was actually happening right here, right now, but clearly it's not. We see Sephiroth come down from the sky in front of Cloud, in front of the tank, but then he's talking to Genova face to face, so to speak. I guess face to neck stump. Just want to give people confirmation that that scene is in fact a flashback, which it clearly is. Even, I mean, I don't know why anybody would question that anyways. And my dudes, that is the video. We are officially caught up on all the Ultimania translations that Audrey has done so far, at least the ones I want to talk about. Obviously, we skipped over a handful, maybe a lot, that I just feel like weren't necessarily video-worthy or stuff that we kind of already knew. And when it comes to the Trace of Two Pasts book, if you guys have seen anything interesting from that book that I've obviously not talked about besides the cargo ship segment, be sure to let me know. If there's anything that's video-worthy, theories, discussions, anything like that, let me know for sure. Anyways, my dudes, I've kept you too long. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys only want to do more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on notifications. Follow me on Twitter, @DashingdavidYT. I'm a Discord. Links to my social networks are in the description. And in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like low